As the bright lights of the French Open flickered in the background, I received a text message that would change everything. The crowd roared as Rafael Nadal served for the championship, but for me, the moment felt muted, almost as if time had slowed. I was sitting courtside in the midst of tennis history, yet what I saw on my phone crushed me in ways I couldn't have anticipated. My name is Alex Carter, and at that moment, I had just been fired through a simple text message while attending the prestigious final in Paris. The text came from my boss, Leonard Matthews, CEO of Titan Tech Solutions, a global consulting firm based in New York. I had been with the company for over 6 years, rising from a junior associate to senior business development director. The accomplishments I had achieved weren't small. 6 years of landing major clients, nurturing relationships, and contributing millions to the company's growth. I had worked through late nights, missed family dinners, and skipped weekends to make sure the business was thriving. And yet, in an instant, I was discarded. The text appeared on my phone, short and to the point. Pathetic employees like you don't deserve success. You're fired. Clear your desk by Monday. No phone call. No explanation. No meeting. Just a cruel, heartless message during a time that should have been celebratory. I had earned this trip to Paris after securing a multi-million-dollar contract with Nexus Tech, the largest deal in our company's history. I thought I'd earned a moment of peace, but Leonard had other plans. I stared at the screen, stunned. The message felt like a slap, each word more humiliating than the last. Around me, the crowd was in a frenzy as Nadal won the point, but all I could hear was the ringing in my ears. Then another text came through. You're fired. Clear out your desk by Monday. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone, but instead, I sat frozen, my hands trembling. The man sitting next to me, who had been quietly observing the match, glanced over. He was well-dressed, perhaps in his late 50s, a calm expression on his face that suggested he belonged in this world of high-profile events. There was something about him that seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Is everything all right? He asked in a soft British accent. His words felt like a lifeline in that suffocating moment. I glanced at him. Recognition hit me like a freight train. It was Richard Westbrook, CEO of Blackstone Enterprises, one of Titan Tech's biggest competitors in Europe. We had met briefly at a tech summit in Berlin 2 years ago, and I remembered him well. His company had been attempting to poach our clients for years. Just some work stuff, I replied, stuffing my phone back into my pocket. But deep down, I knew this moment was bigger than just another firing. Leonard had just made a grave mistake, and he didn't even realize it yet. I had spent 6 years building Titan Tech's European operations from the ground up. When I joined, the company had no international presence. By the time I was fired, I had brought in over 50 clients, with contracts totaling more than $100 million. The European division alone accounted for nearly half of Titan Tech's total revenue. Yet Leonard had always resented my success. He was the kind of leader who wanted credit for every win but was quick to distance himself from any failure. There had been warning signs, subtle at first. Leonard began excluding me from key meetings, hiring his nephew, Leonard Matthews, without consulting me, and slowly taking over client calls that should have gone through me. I had confronted him about it, but his response was always the same. I'm just streamlining operations. You need to focus on your job, not matters above your pay grade. My wife, Maria, had warned me months ago. He's setting you up for something, she said, noticing the change in Leonard's behavior. They're planning to push you out. I had dismissed her concerns. After all, I had built something substantial. My relationships with clients like Nexus Tech and Syntel Dynamics were untouchable. Or so I thought. But then Leonard made the ultimate power move. He fired me while I was in Paris, leaving me unable to defend myself or rally support. It wasn't just a firing. It was a calculated move to humiliate me. I looked at Richard again. He was still watching the match, but I could sense his attention had shifted slightly toward me. The way he observed everything. The way his gaze lingered on my phone. Richard was an astute businessman, and he had likely caught on to what had just transpired. He wasn't the type to miss anything. I pulled out my phone again and reread Leonard's message. The words felt even more degrading the second time. Pathetic employees like you don't deserve success. Richard turned to me and said, "Forgive me for prying, but I have to ask. Everything all right?" Something inside me shifted. The anger, the frustration. It was all becoming something else. Something colder. Leonard had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and he didn't even know it yet. I thought about the clients I had built relationships with over the years. Richard had been trying to break into the US market, but his company lacked the expertise and connections to succeed. What if he suddenly had access to everything I had built? The match ended, and the crowd began filing out. Richard stood up and stretched, then looked at me directly. "Forgive me for being presumptuous," he said, "but you look like a man who's just received some very unpleasant news." I stood up and extended my hand. "Actually," I said, a smile creeping onto my face, "I think I just received the best news of my career." Richard shook my hand with a smile. "Richard Westbrook. And I suspect that formerly will become very significant." I showed him Leonard's text messages. Richard read them twice, each time his expression shifting from curiosity to deep interest. "Well," he said finally, "this is quite fortunate timing. Would you be interested in continuing this conversation over dinner? I know an excellent place near the Louvre." The game had just begun. Leonard had no idea what he had just set into motion. That evening, as I dined with Richard at the elegant restaurant near the Louvre, the conversation shifted from pleasantries to business. By the time dessert was served, Richard had made it clear that he was looking for someone with my expertise, someone who could help propel Blackstone Enterprises into the American market. He spoke about his vision for expanding into the US and how his company had struggled to break into that lucrative sector without the right partnerships and connections. I could see the opportunity unfolding before me. Leonard had underestimated me, thinking that firing me would crush my career. What he didn't realize was that I had spent 6 years building not just business relationships, but also a network of trust, respect, and expertise. That was something that couldn't be taken away with a single text message. And now, here I was, being offered a chance to lead Blackstone's American expansion. By the time the evening ended, Richard had made me an offer I couldn't refuse. A senior leadership position, a significant salary increase, and equity in Blackstone. Everything I had been promised at Titan Tech but had never received. But more than that, it was a chance to rebuild from the ground up, this time on my terms. Back in New York, Monday morning arrived, and I walked into Titan Tech's offices for what I knew would be my last day. The building felt different somehow, distant, foreign even. The hustle and bustle of the office, the usual frantic pace of work, seemed irrelevant to me now. Leonard and his nephew, Eric, sat in the conference room, waiting for me. "Alex," Leonard greeted me with an unnaturally cheerful tone. "How was Paris?" I didn't respond right away. I knew this moment was important. I had to make it count. I sat down across from him, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Educational," I replied flatly. Patricia Wells, the HR director, slid a termination packet toward me. "Standard severance, non-compete agreements, return of company property," she explained. "Nothing generous, but nothing illegal either. Everything is in order." I signed the papers without hesitation. Leonard seemed surprised by my compliance. "I expected more pushback from you," he said, his voice tinged with confusion. I stood up, extending my hand. "No point in fighting the inevitable," I said, my voice steady. "Good luck with the European market, Leonard." As I walked out of the office for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. The world I had known at Titan Tech was no longer mine. But I wasn't done yet. The following week, the damage began. Clients who had trusted me with their business reached out, confused and angry. Klaus Weber from Syntel Dynamics was the first to call. "Alex, what is going on at Titan Tech? We can't work with Leonard Matthews. He doesn't understand our needs." Marie Dubois at Hollowgate Systems echoed the same sentiments. "If you're no longer with Titan Tech, we need to discuss our future with the company. We're not working with anyone else." The word was spreading fast. Leonard and Eric had underestimated the value of personal relationships in the business world. They thought they could replace me with a nephew who had no understanding of the cultural nuances, no international experience, and no credibility. But I wasn't the only one who knew what was at stake. The clients I had nurtured were loyal to me, and they weren't going to just switch allegiances on a whim. By the end of the week, Leonard was panicking. The contracts were beginning to unravel. A formal termination letter came in from Nexus Tech, one of our biggest clients, and soon after, the Norwegian pharmaceutical company canceled their contract negotiations. The weight of their decisions was beginning to hit him, and I knew he was starting to realize the depth of his mistake. I called Richard to update him on the situation. "I think we need to accelerate our timeline," I told him. "This is bigger than we thought. Leonard isn't just firing me. He's destroying his own company." Richard was silent for a moment. "That's actually perfect for us," he said finally. "If Leonard's preparing to sell the European division to a German firm, he's already given up on managing the relationships. And if the clients aren't happy with the transition, they'll be looking for a new home." By Wednesday, I was on a plane to London to meet with Richard and finalize my employment agreement with Blackstone Enterprises. The terms were beyond what I had hoped for: Director of American Operations with complete autonomy over client relationships, and a significant equity stake in the company. Back in New York, the storm was beginning. Clients who had trusted me with their business were now reaching out to Blackstone, eager to continue working with me. Klaus Weber at Syntel Dynamics was the first to sign on, followed by Marie Dubois, who had been frustrated with Eric's lack of competence. The Norwegian pharmaceutical company, which had seemed out of reach, was suddenly on the table again. By the end of the week, I had already secured over $50 million in contracts for Blackstone, just by maintaining the relationships I had spent years building. Leonard, meanwhile, was stuck in damage control mode. His deal with the German firm was falling apart, and Trevor had already quit. The board at Titan Tech was starting to ask tough questions about the missing revenue, and Leonard had no answers. The company that he had once thought of as his personal empire was crumbling beneath his feet. 3 weeks after Leonard had fired me, Richard called me into his office with some unexpected news. Gravora Group's board has just voted Leonard Matthews out as regional director. Apparently, losing over $80 million in contracted revenue is a fireable offense. There was a quiet satisfaction in the moment, but no joy. Leonard had brought this upon himself with his arrogance, his inability to see the value in people, and his misplaced confidence in his family. His downfall wasn't a result of my actions. It was his own doing. "Now for the good part," Richard continued. "Trevor Denton is telling people that you sabotaged the European division. But Patricia Wells has been documenting everything: email forwards, backdated employment records, the attempted sale to the German firm. She's prepared to testify about everything. It was perfect." Leonard had played his hand too early, and in doing so had created a paper trail that would expose him for what he truly was: a man who had planned his own demise. Months later, as I sat in my new office at Blackstone Enterprises in London, reviewing quarterly reports, Maria called. "You'll never guess who I saw at the grocery store yesterday," she said. "Leonard. He was bagging groceries at the supermarket near our old apartment. He looked terrible. I felt no satisfaction from his downfall. In truth, I had learned something valuable over the last few months about loyalty, timing, and the importance of treating people with respect. Leonard had lost everything because of his failure to do just that. Meanwhile, Blackstone Enterprises was thriving. We had secured new clients in the US and Europe, opened offices in Boston and Seattle, and our partnerships continued to grow. Most importantly, I had found a company that valued competence over politics, a place where success was a shared endeavor, not a battle for the top. As the Roland Garros tournament returned to Paris in June, I found myself back in the city, but this time I wasn't sitting in the crowd. I was in the corporate hospitality suite of Blackstone Enterprises, watching the match from a place of triumph rather than defeat. Rafael Nadal won his 14th French Open title that day, but it wasn't the tennis that caught my attention. It was the realization that sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Leonard's text message had set me free. Even though that wasn't his intention, it had changed the course of my life forever. And maybe, just maybe, I should thank him for that. Feeling inspired by this story? You've just witnessed a career transformation that came from the toughest challenges. Now it's your turn to take charge. Have you ever been underestimated or faced a tough break? Drop a comment below and let us know how you turn things around or how you're planning to. We'd love to hear your story. Don't miss out on more powerful stories like this. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's keep pushing forward together.